Hi, friends, and welcome to We're Already Here, a podcast about celebrating who we are through the highs and lows in our lives and understanding the story that we created for ourselves. Today, I am here with Harry. Harry has been a commercial and residential real estate broker for 13 years and is based out of New York City. From luxury condos all over the city to selling portfolios of investment properties, including industrial and retail investments, Harry has an extensive business track record. For you Bravo fans, he has also cameoed on $1 Million Listing. In his spare time, Harry enjoys working out, skiing, playing tennis, and reading. Harry, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you?
Living the dream. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice after a busy day at work to decompress on this fine Wednesday with you.
I love it.
So why don't you tell me and the listeners a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yeah, sure. My name is Harry Zikos. I am a real estate broker. Started when I was super young, practiced all throughout college, got my degree in business management and finance. And then I said, you know what, I'm kind of good at this. Let me keep it going. Done a million types of different transactions. I get bored very easily. So I tend to keep my service stack completely ambidextrous, whether it's luxury residential or commercial real estate, whatever it is. You know, I'll sell it, I'll broker it as long as I like the deal and I believe in the fundamentals of the sale. Aside from that, I just like to live. I've done a lot of self-work to the point where I've gotten to a point where I really just have control over what goes on in my mind and how I practice. And, you know, business, personal life. And I just live. I just do what I got to do.
Yeah. What even brought up Harry coming on to the podcast is we have found ourselves very frequently in like deep conversations about mindset and self-work. So definitely very excited to dig into a lot of the things that you mentioned in real estate and like believing in a deal, et cetera, et cetera. But to kind of set the scene, what we'll be talking about today is mindset, the interaction of that in business, and all of this juicy self-work talk. So to start, tell me more about the role that you think self-awareness and emotional intelligence plays in being a good business person.
That's a fantastic question. I think everybody, you know, depending on whatever you're doing, you know, everybody needs a working thesis. You know, when I coach young agents, you know, fresh off getting their license, they kind of don't know where their drive is. And anybody, man, woman, doesn't matter. Anybody without a goal, a focus, or direction is, you know, somebody's aimless is not going to get anything done. You know, so people, we're human beings, right? You know, we have our eyes in the front of us. We you know, we don't have our eyes on the sides like a bunny rabbit. You know, we're very K-selected species. So we're going to have something in front of us to go after, you know, very target driven. I think that if you don't have a working thesis, you know, it's game over.
Can you define more what you mean by working thesis?
Absolutely. I'll just explain what my working thesis is.
Yeah, totally.
Blatant transparency without misrepresenting your clients and without breaking your fiduciaries as a broker, as a licensed broker who has to represent somebody's interests, give them their loyalty and make sure that you're acting on their best interests. But of course, doing fair and honest dealings with anybody who you don't have a fiduciary relationship, which is like a client broker relationship, or maybe like if you're a lawyer, for example, not legal advice. If you're a lawyer, you have the same fiduciary obligations. But generally speaking, you know, we have to disclose details of a transaction.
Yeah.
The soil's contaminated. You know about it. You have to tell the buyer, right? Things like that. Some brokers have developed reputations over, you know, at least in New York City. I can't speak to other parts of the country, but real estate agents, you know, have this bad reputation almost to the point where they're just these lying, greedy, commission breath having scumbags that just don't really care. They just want to open the door, get a commission and close that. I tend to be antithetical to that. I prefer to do something that's more along the lines of relationship marketing, and actually keeping my clients for life and advising every step of, wherever they have a requirement.
Sure.
Fun fact, some people wouldn't think of this, but generally speaking, when a real estate agent gets a client, that client will tend to do anywhere from 5 to 7 transactions over, real estate transactions with rents, buy,
Oh,
sell,
interesting.
generally speaking,
Yeah.
over the course of their life, So if a broker thinks in the long term and they're really interested in doing this long term, or, for as long as they can, you start somewhere small. You get somebody a rental, and then all of a sudden they turn into a buyer 2 years later, 3 years later.
Sure.
That place that they bought was too small because they ended up getting married and had a kid. So they sell that. And, so if you have a good standpoint in how you want to come to the marketplace and how you don't want to bullshit people, pardon my French, you have to come at it really empathetically. And,
Totally.
when it comes from mindset, if you don't have the belief that you're going to achieve what your goals are, that's it. One thing that I was struggling with early on in my career was having a limiting belief system, saying, "Oh, I can't sell a building in Long Island City. I can't sell this commercial property. I can't. All these negative things that we allow ourselves to tell ourselves is some of the most toxic things for business, for personal life."
Yeah.
So that's kind of piecing it in without getting too scattershot in the response to the question.
No, totally. I love so many things you said. You mentioned being a good businessman over the long term requires coming at your business empathetically. So much there. So one, a lot of that soft dollar business that you're doing for your clients. So like maybe you're advising them unpaid per se, but it's like that soft dollar connection that you'll get when they make their next purchase. What is really undersold and has been undersold in the teachings of business, I guess maybe up until recently, is the power of those soft skills. And this is something I am super, super interested in, not to stray too far from the topic, but our society, we tend to think about things in the masculine and the feminine. And we say like the masculine is good at math, hard skill, crunching numbers, aggressive, whatever. And then we tend to think of those soft skills to being a quote more feminine. So like empathy, care, thoughtfulness, things like that. And it's funny because at large, and we might differ on this. I actually don't know if we've talked about this, so this will be interesting. I feel like at large, those quote feminine qualities are devalued. If you look at like professions like teaching and nursing, they are paid less. Even through the COVID crisis, you've seen like the professions that have been the most impacted by the crisis are teachers and nurses. And you look at what typically our society deems as feminine qualities as lesser qualities, where from my perspective, I think those are actually the most marketable qualities. What makes you a very good business person that's making 6 figures and a good business person who's making 7 figures? I think that the break there is the way you can enact your soft skills, the way you can enact those more human qualities of empathy, care, thoughtfulness, things like that. So I want to start there. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I would even add to that in thought, like kind of riding the line, the dividing line between the yin and yang, between the masculine and the feminine, right? Like, this phrase that there's 2 sides to a coin, and then there's the edge.
Yeah.
But then there's actually, it's also a turn of phrase for there's one side and the other side, and then there's the truth.
Yeah.
There's always 2 sides to an argument, the truth, right? So I think if you can, or anybody can ride that line between those hard and soft skills that you just went over, that's the real delta that like people should probably target in on it.
Sure.
If you can leverage your aggressive idiosyncrasies and then your empathetic idiosyncrasies and then blend them and then be self-aware and observe yourself from like a third party lens, and like, like most people are not self-aware. Like most people are like locked up in a daze, like plugged into their AirPods, walking up to the train and like drinking their Starbucks, like they're completely asleep while they're actually awake. Rarely do they actually practice anything where you're like, is that my lower back, or is that my shoulder? They're not, me, I'm like, when I walk around, I'm just like constantly observing and taking everything in. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm a little crazy. Maybe it's all these supplements I take.
No, it's definitely like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our generation is, most of us have our basic needs covered. Like most of us have our basic needs covered in terms of like, I guess maybe I'm just speaking within my own peer group. I can't speak for everyone, but like most of us have our financial needs covered. We have a roof over our head. We have food and decent community, right? You and I are in the same friend group. We have a good group of people around us. And then
Hell
it's
yeah.
like, once all those needs are fulfilled, what's next? So the next step up is, or the final step up is self-actualization. So it's like, I think that's where our generation is like aiming for. So I think like a lot of times we're craving the self-awareness. And when people feel just perpetually unhappy, I think oftentimes it's because you're like lacking that.
That's interesting. I definitely think that's something to, to hone in on if we were to diagnose like societal issues with
Yeah.
mindset.
let
You
me
know,
let
I
me let me say right now, Harry and I are not qualified to do this. So enjoy the
definitely am
conversation and
not your
take it
therapist, but I've played
with a
one on
grain of
TV.
salt.
No, no, people in my industry, especially, on the residential side, because residential deals are very emotionally driven.
Oh,
Fun
sure.
fact, business or emotion or personal, every deal, every decision is emotionally driven to an
Everything.
extent.
Everything is emotionally driven. Absolutely.
Yeah, like we're freaking human beings. Like you can't like detach emotion. It's kind of just in our brain. Not
Right.
a psychologist. But coming back to that, right? Like people don't really, a lot of them don't get it, but
Yeah.
we also find ourselves creating other problems in place of what might actually be the solution because we're not introspective. A lot of times I find that we blame everything around us where where there's a problem or something that bothers us, but then, maybe I'm the asshole.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Or self-medicate, and not just with like drugs or alcohol, but self-medicate with like our phones are the easiest self-medication. If you're sad, you can just distract yourself on Instagram for 4 hours until you fall asleep. It's like we have this forced entertainment, this like pacification without actually like putting band-aids on it, without actually healing the wound.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, forget about the science of like all the blue light and the fact that ruins your circadian rhythm and we have like the craziest like vitamin D deficiencies across the country, like more than ever. I mean, it's funny that the last couple of years has been an interesting cause celeb where that topic kind of coincides, but people are not really paying attention to their health these days. People are not observing themselves internally, psychologically, spiritually. They're not necessarily going anywhere with pure direction and taking vigor with their steps towards their goals because they haven't even. I know people. I'm in a lot of like peer groups where we do a lot of self work and like self help amongst like there's some people are very very like they haven't figured it out and they're very like emotionally distraught and they're like stuck in that phrase that's been thrown around a lot these last few years is like analysis paralysis.
Okay.
Where they're like, I just don't know what to do. Like
Yeah.
I have guys coming to me like, dude, I just don't know what to do. I'm like, well, what are you good at? They're like, I don't know. What did you go to school for? And they tell me some degree that's not great, English. I'm like, oh, you can write an email.
Right. Yeah.
Become a copywriter or whatever, right? But because we're directionless, they're directionless. It's because they got like those three basic Maslow hierarchy of needs covered, but they haven't really developed their social circle, their family,
Yeah.
and they're just caught into this, consumption lifestyle. Oh, Starbucks right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I want Chipotle. I'm going to go on my phone and have them deliver some Chipotle. So I don't really need to like go out and like discover or anything like that. Or go to the gym.
We live in a very convenient society. These conversations that we're having are pretty exclusive to like the US because everything is so convenient. You think about like other countries where if you want to go to the bank, it'll take 2 hours out of your day. We can bank from our phones in 5 minutes. Like we have the time to be able to sit here and think about if we're actually content in life or not. Like our parents never had to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a modern ailment. The next point of yours I wanted to talk about was limiting belief systems. Can you define what you see as limiting belief system to the viewers and how does that impact you tactically?
Yeah. So a limiting belief system is basically subconsciously driven negative thoughts and toxic shame that prevents you from acting on what you ideally want to achieve, whether it's walking up to that cute girl, at the coffee shop that, you kind of run into a few times and you're like, damn, she looks pretty cute behind that mask. But, I don't think I can talk to her. I'm too overweight, or I don't have a Lambo or whatever. Right. Or it's that person who thinks that they can't achieve a certain level of economic achievement. They can't get their net worth to a point, go from like you said, go from a 6-figure to a 7-figure earner. I'm not here saying I'm some 7-figure online fire community business guru yet. But but my point is that, self-awareness and understanding your habits and understanding how you allocate time comes up to that. But having a limiting belief is pretty much what those words mean. But it's usually internal and it's subconsciously exercised, and it keeps your brain comfortable with the current state of affairs, generally speaking. Like I know kids that still live at home, and even though they make plenty of money, they refuse to allow themselves to break out of that shell because they're comfortable. They're like, oh, I'll never find a good deal. Oh, I don't want to pay some asshole rent. Or they just come up with convenient excuses. Instead of deriving a solution to what their problem is. They'll have a desire. They're like, oh, I want to do this. I want to live alone. I want to have a car. I want to whatever. All right. These are like all guy things I'm saying.
Sure. Right? Yeah. Whatever.
But they'll have these thoughts, but then they'll immediately find an excuse that allows them to stay lower in their hierarchy of where they think they want to be. And it comes down to belief. It comes down to belief. Like if you don't think you can do something, you're not going to do it.
Yeah. What's also really fascinating about limiting belief systems, so from like a psychology and therapy perspective, so no secret if you've been listening to the podcast, cognitive behavior therapy, I love it. I stand by it. I think it's like, and these aren't my words, like the APA has considered it one of the gold standards of therapy. One thing that you do many sessions in, so I think maybe like after you've been with your therapist for some time, call it 2 months, I don't know, maybe it's different for everyone, you get into limiting belief systems. Some cognitive behavior therapists or therapists who practice CBT will literally like show you a list of 20 common self-defeating beliefs. And your homework is to look through and be like, which ones apply to me? And then after you've gained a toolkit through CBT of ways to become aware of your thoughts, the way to reframe negative thoughts, looking at a triggering experience and understanding what happened, what triggered me, how can I reframe this experience for the next time? Once you have that toolkit, you look at this list of self-defeating beliefs and you target the belief directly. It's a very powerful tool to just like see all these things in front of you and being like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was so unique, but it looks like I'm falling into the 20 most common self-defeating beliefs. So a very powerful tool, becoming aware of yours and like doing actual work to target it.
It's been revolutionary for me. I've never seen a therapist personally, but what I have done is gotten hypnotized.
Oh, yes. Talk about that.
That was a trip. Hypnosis. I've only done one session, but that one session was extremely cathartic. And basically it sounds so woo-woo and like, oh yeah, if I'm going to like explain what it felt like, it was more like a guided meditation. Sure. If anyone's ever done like a really good yoga session, and towards the end of the yoga session, you're kind of like laying down, and if the yoga instructor is really good, they'll like, he or she will just like take you down like a visualization path, right? So it was kind of like being taken down a visualization path, for about 1.5 hours of, going through events, digging through the subconscious, putting you in a very relaxed state, not necessarily asleep. You're like semi-conscious, you're there, but you're relaxed, you're calm, you do a series of breathing exercises. And then then you go into, the hypnotist will ask you a question like, name something that caused, trauma, or that you think that there was trauma. Because the idea of all this toxic shame is brought on by trauma. because I don't know if I defined it earlier or more clearly with the limiting belief system, but trauma causes a traumatic event will occur, and then it'll seep into our subconscious early on, especially when we're, in our formative years, that, oh, this is the norm. This is what is tied to your survival. Whatever negative experiences occurred to one could negatively impact them. And then, oh my God, I didn't realize that thing that happened when I was 6 attributed to me thinking that I wouldn't amount to anything because I had a toxic parent or something like that. I'm not saying that was me particularly,
right?
But these are constants that I've come across when I speak with friends of mine who've also have had sessions with hypnotists. And it's very cathartic. So what we ended up doing was, we ended up finding a series of, parts of my past, and then we ended up putting them in a series of paintings, almost, if you will, like a row of well-organized things. It's like, okay, we're going to put this one here in a series of positive, powerful lessons. And then we're just going to categorize it, because Harry, it didn't kill you. He was literally telling me, he's like, these didn't kill you.
Yeah.
You're still here. You're still doing this. You believe you're successful. You are successful, et cetera, right? And then he just kind of brainwashes you that you can do what you want, to not be thinking like commission only people, for example. Early on, most of them, big money problems.
Interesting.
Like really, like they're constantly thinking, oh, is this the day or month that I'm going to go broke? Am I ever going to be able to do this deal?
Yeah.
Is this going to happen? Like,
it's coming from a scarcity mindset.
Exactly. And that drives a lot of limiting belief at the same time. And sometimes people get frozen up and then just like,
and what's tough about that stuff too is like, you can logically know that like this isn't true, right? You can logically know whatever your self-defeating belief is, right? Like you can know, I can become a really good business person. Like I can get really good at it, and then still in your mind and in your heart, you feel that trapped feeling. And it's like, I feel like I've never done hypnosis, but part of me think that's like, when you said brainwash, it clicked for me. That's where it fits in, right? Is like taking what you know is true and making you feel that it's true, because those are very different things.
And behave that it's true. Because if you really like embody it, and you're psyched yourself up to the point, and you do your affirmations, which was like my morning routine, you literally behave like you're a winner. Like every morning I wake up, I say, I'm a multimillionaire. Every morning I wake up, I say, I weigh X amount of pounds, which is my goal, right? Like I'm 180 right now. My goal is I weigh 170. I am jacked.
Right.
I'm an amazing tennis player. I go through all these like I'm an amazing skier. I have X amount of recurring passive income every year with real estate rental properties, whatever, right?
And honestly, even if you start doing that shit jokingly, like it sticks. This is probably in college. Jokingly to my friends, I'd be like, wow, I look in a mirror and I'm like, God, I can't believe I look like this. And honestly, it freaking works, because at this point in my life, like I literally, oh my God, I'm going to expose myself. I literally might edit this out. But like, I literally think I am so attractive. I like look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, wow, what a beautiful person. It started as a joke. Like I didn't think that when I was 20 years old. I was like joking. And then now I've done it so much that I'm like, wow, like what a good looking person. So it really does work.
I mean, I do that myself all the time. I mean, I have a 2-stage skincare routine, AM and PM. Like I like when I finish my skincare routine, I'm like, oh God, you look amazing. Like, and it's okay. It's okay to be egocentric. Like we're human beings. We have an ego.
That's the other thing too. Like, the real world is hard. Do what you need to do to get through it without being a jerk. Do it with kindness. Do it with empathy. Do it with good in your heart. But if you need to tell yourself, I'm literally a 10 out of 10 to get through the day, then you're a 10 out of 10. Fine. Point blank. I believe you.
You're somebody's 10 out of 10.
Right. Yeah.
At least one person,
Right. Yeah. So let's take the Harry from 10 years ago, right?
Okay.
Maybe just graduated college, maybe a year or so out.
Yep.
How is your mindset different now from 10 years ago, Harry, across the board, career, relationships, personal health, etc.?
Well, I was a lot heavier. I was definitely in the overweight, obese type category, somewhere, teetering between those lines. I was definitely less healthy, less obsessed with calorie content, macro tracking, micronutrient consumption, supplementation, all this like biohacking, craze. I kind of, have been drinking that Kool-Aid of biohacking for a while. I'm obsessed with every bit of nutrition research that comes out. I dive into articles whenever I can. That was one thing that I think helped catalyze if that's a word, was the catalyst for my mindset development. I think back then, 10 years ago, I was definitely more on the limited belief system. I can't do anything more than residential renting or leasing transactions. I can't become a angel investor or do anything in tech, which I ended up doing. I can't sell a building. I can't do that. Like I had all these like negative things about myself and who I am. And these were limiting beliefs at the time. And I didn't work through them until only, until my 30s, basically. I mean, I'm 32 right now, but like early on at 30 is when I like came to these self-work like drives, to really like just fix my inner game, fix my I wouldn't want to say mental health, but just like, it's hard to describe.
Mental health. It's mental health, it's emotional health. Yeah.
Peace. You know what I mean? Just like,
that's a form of health.
Yeah, I think so too. Imagine people throughout the day, cling, 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 notifications all day long. A lot of things, car horns, whatever it is, all these externalities just plugging us up. And then you have the news, and then you have TV, and you have your phone and your Instagram and all that fun stuff. And you're just getting all this nonsense decision fatigue, having the ability to just detach and just be at peace and like have like your routines like that for me was like one of the best practices of getting back to like a focused mental point of origin, to be very like driven. Okay, today I'm doing these 4 things on my to-do list. Then I clean email. Then I go do this. And then, okay, now I have a couple of showings. And then it's like, when you finished all that, you're like, oh, this is great. Now I can go to the gym and like, get it going, whatever.
Yeah. I am very like ascribed to like the routine and like the focus and all that. But I feel like in this season of my life, like I think in the past few weeks, I'm like trying a new thing and I think this works for me because I am very self-disciplined, just like as a person, where I'm just like letting my body tell me what to do. I feel like because work hasn't been crazy, I'm just like, you know what? If I don't want to go to the gym today, I simply will not go. Like for the past week, all I want to do is read. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to read. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let myself do that. I'm going to let myself just chill and read until I feel like I'm back focused at it and want to grind and want to be ambitious and want to do all that. But for now, I'm going to read. So I feel like there's a balance, right? Between being like focused, routine, 6 a.m. workout, 7 a.m. log into work, grind till 7 p.m. I think there's seasons of your life where that works perfectly and that makes you feel good and fulfilled and content. And then I think there's seasons of your life where it's like, I'm going to let my body and my soul tell me what's right for me right now. But like your body and your soul telling you what's right for you shouldn't be scrolling on Instagram 8 hours a day. There should be some sort of level of, I'm not saying like be lazy. I'm saying do what fills you. Sometimes that's not grinding and going to the gym. Sometimes that's like reading, researching, like my hobbies is podcast. Like sometimes it's your hobby, So very interesting.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm actually in a bit of that phase right now. I'm working out, but I'm not even working out to really like hit my numbers or like my personal record of like a bench press or any particular lift. I'm there to just get muscle activation and mobility, and like I'm taking it easy. I'm sleeping a lot more.
Mental clarity, man. Like,
mental clarity and peace. This is, maybe we can talk about this for a second, because I think this is really important. I really am of the belief that, I've had this problem previously. I don't know about you, but a lot of our society, especially in somewhere like New York City, I mean, you and I are practically neighbors, but we have a real disconnect with what good sleep is.
Oh my God. Yes. I could not agree more.
Like if you keep this near your bedside table or your nightstand or whatever, or even in your room, like I'm really questioning if you know what good sleep is.
Yeah, I gotta plug something right now. So, Andrew Huberman, he is a neuroscientist. He has a podcast called the Huberman Lab, and
Hmm.
he brings neuroscience to a very tactical standpoint. Like, what can you do in your life to integrate the latest neuroscience to make you better, right? And his first season is all about sleep. I gotta plug it. He's doing well for himself. He's literally a professor and a doctor, but like the Huberman Lab podcast, incredible. It has helped my sleep a lot by like following his tips.
Shout out to Mr. Huberman.
But yeah, totally agree.
I love it.
Um, so last question before I get to like my final three questions that I ask everyone.
Sure.
What's next for you in your career? Like what are your goals? What is Harry Zikos doing next?
So my 2022 targets,
Mm.
make as much money as I can possibly can, but at least sell in excess of $15 million in transactions, get my Florida real estate license.
All right.
I'm expanding into multiple markets along with Colorado. And I'm a skier, so I have friends in the network, and many of them are very wealthy. And you never know when they want to buy
There you go.
a ski chalet on the side of Aspen, Snowmass, or Vail. I also am in the middle of deploying a content creation strategy, which I hope to reshare this interview that we're having and conversation rather, where I'm going to be building an added stack to my brokerage business and in my endeavors as an investor. I plan on doing consultations, community building within the scope of real estate investing and business and personal finance. If you look at a YouTuber, some of my inspirations and kind of like, oh my God, like I would love to like just hang out with these guys. If you look at guys like Graham Stephan, shout out to Graham Stephan, and meet Kevin Paffrath. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But these are just some examples of some really great content creators that I've been inspired to see how I can add value to the community of content creators on YouTube and maybe other platforms in the future. But I really aim to build more of a presence on YouTube, doing live stream shows, shows where like I can have people call in and then like they want me to like underwrite a deal with them or something like that. Like, oh, hey,
cool.
let's run out the numbers. Like I want to get interactive things where I interview other professionals outside of just real estate, attorneys, accountants, just get around that whole conversation, because macro and microeconomics are some of my other passions. When I research,
I know we didn't even touch on that.
Yeah,
We'll do another episode.
We could, yeah, we should make a recurring episode, recurring theme, perhaps. And these are things that I follow, right? I'm an investor. I'm in the stock market. I'm in crypto. I'm in real estate. I have a lot of exposure. I like precious metals as well. And I'm always tracking what's going on. Oh my God, the Fed is doing this. Oh my God, the Fed is doing that, or whatever. So if I can have a conversation in real time, almost like a live stream situation, and then talk about what's going on and be a source, I think it'll be a lot of fun.
These last three questions I ask to every guest that comes onto We're Already Here.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is all about celebrating the lows just as much as the highs in your life. Can you tell me about a struggle in your life that sucked while you were going through it, but looking back now, you celebrate it? What did that struggle give you that you cherish today?
That is a great question. What did that struggle give me that I cherish today? I would say there were times earlier in my career, kind of going back to what we were chatting about, like limiting belief, right? There were times where I really didn't think I was gonna like do well. There was times I was like, am I gonna have to get some 9 to 5 to figure it out? Is this the right career path for me? Am I going to be hitting the numbers that I want to hit? Am I ever gonna, have this, have that, or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Those moments, those like those internal mental struggles and like fear of scarcity, the scarcity-based mindset versus the abundance-based mindset. Like I was definitely in a scarce mindset once upon a time, almost 10 years ago, somewhere in that range, maybe like 8 to 10 years. Sure. And then looking back at that fear, looking back at that anxiety that version of myself experienced, I couldn't have it any other way, honestly speaking, because the series of events that has occurred up until this very moment have brought me to this very moment where I am very much I'm at peace with everything. I've also come to the realization that as human beings, we all suffer the same problem. You ever heard the joke, life is a sexually transmitted disease that ends in death? So like, wait, I remind myself constantly, like, you're gonna die.
What are we suffering from? Is that the same problem that we're all suffering from, that we're all gonna die?
Well, no, but we all run around doing things, frantically trying to like organize our poker chips or our personal lives or, our legacy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Something, our passions. But then it's like, it's kind of a sad story, but like, we're all gonna have our day.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of like no, I have a less morbid view on death. You can't control it, right? Like, we're all gonna die. You can never control how it's gonna happen. It's kind of nice. Like, one thing I don't have to worry about because there's nothing I can do about it. So
yeah,
I'm like, it's like a relief to me. I'm like, whatever, I can't do anything about it.
So I remind myself that, death can be around the corner. I could get struck by a motorcycle or a bus or whatever. And it's okay. There's so many things that I cannot control. I used to be very much like one of those control freaks. I still kind of am in certain aspects, but like, food particularly, I'm obsessed with organic consumption and, like keeping pesticides as far away from me as possible. But like, it's inevitable, So it kind of brings peace in its own weird way.
Right. Next question. How have you worked to change how you perceive the world around you? And how have you worked to change your thoughts and beliefs to ones that serve you and create a world that you want to live in?
I love this question. I think we kind of danced in and out of the, the topics earlier. Basically, I've done a lot of focus on my health. I think that was one of the more pressing moments because my whole life I was one of these fat kids. Nothing wrong with it. I was just overweight most of my life. Never really understood like the simplicity of, the compound effect. Great book, by the way. Oh my God. Shout out to Darren Hardy. You start here, you don't think you're ever going to get to here, but as you slowly take the little steps on that ladder, eventually, like over time and maintaining your habits, like habit formation is one of the biggest things for me. Keeping a morning routine. I mean, I don't really think I need to go into it, but just like making that smoothie, taking those vitamins, having like that black cup of coffee or whatever, I like to have, some sort of routine in the morning and then, have a break midday, go hit the gym, come back to the office, do your thing. But ultimately, self-work, mindset, self-belief, or joining and building community has been something recently that has been a personal, almost obsession, really.
Totally.
I have joined some communities, right, where we help each other on a lot of different things, a lot of different domains, whether it's fitness, finance. Yeah. We help get guys jobs. We help create like a national and international network with people to share insights. Some people have dating issues. And we all kind of help one another out. Like there's some guys that are that they seem helpless and they're clinging to something for a solution.
Yeah.
And a lot of us may or may not have been through those same problems, and we just pull the other guy up, because so that has brought me a lot of fulfillment.
Yes.
Ultimately, I mean, we talked about beliefs so much in this podcast. I feel like I think you should title it Belief Systems.
Literally.
But how I view the world today compared to how I used to view the world, I used to put a lot of other external characters and factors as a primary focus instead of myself. And I completely flipped that script.
Yeah.
I look at myself as the primary. if I, it's like that thing when you're in an airplane and they're going through the security protocols, with this flight attendants, and this is how you put on the oxygen mask for yourself first, not your child, because if you can't breathe, your child can't breathe. That whole thing, right? I'm a big believer in that. If I can't help myself, well, then what good am I to anybody else? I have to be able to stand on my own first, and then I can go figure out to help the world. What did Jordan Peterson? Everyone loves that guy, I think. But what did he say?
I don't think so.
I know. That's why I made that face. Whatever. Everyone has their own opinions. It's okay. But he said something interesting. He's like, clean your own room before you try to go in and change the world. Before you try to change the world, why don't you like fix your house?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I love the point you mentioned on community and fulfillment, because I think one thing we talked about this Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the way to self-actualization. This is typically said in the framing of relationships, but I feel like we do this with friendships too. You expect one person or one group of friends to be like everything for you. Your confidant, your intellectual stimulant, your support, your advisor. What I have found so critical to my own contentment with my life is like having friends that like fulfill me in different ways. Like I feel like I have my friends who I go to when I need like that deep emotional support. They just get me. They know what I want. I have friends, like I think like our group that like are my friends for like intellectual stimulation. Like I think we have really interesting conversations. We can talk. I think our group could probably sit in a room with white walls and nothing else and talk for 12 hours and still run out of time of things to talk about. And I love that. Like that fills me. I think it's so important to find communities that fill you in all the ways that you need to be filled.
I couldn't agree more. Ideas live longer than us.
Yeah.
That's like, I love philosophy. I'm obsessed with the exchange of ideas and deep discussion and discourse. I mean, whenever you and I are hanging out in our friend groups, we always end up going in on something, and everyone's like,
that happens all the time. Literally, when we made the decision to put Harry on the podcast, we were literally at a bar, and I think the whole world was going on around us, and me and Harry were like zoned in talking about like childhood trauma, like just like the most random, but like we went in on conversation. It was like the whole world was going on around us, and we were like 3 hours deep into fucking whatever mindset,
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we veered off of the question too much. Okay. We tend to do that.
Okay. Final question. Tell me the story that you've created for yourself.
The story I created for myself are my daily affirmations, basically.
Okay.
The story I created for myself: financially independent.
Okay.
Multi-millionaire.
Love that.
Earning hundreds of thousands in passive income annually. Amazing physique. Amazing athlete in the sports and domains that I love: tennis, martial arts, skiing, all the above.
Sure.
I could do whatever I want at the drop of a hat.
There you go.
Nobody tells me what and where to go and what to do. And untethered freedom. Untethered freedom is my drive. I aim to be one of these people that can live, one place 5-6 months, the other place, I don't want to be tied down to one geographic location anymore.
Sure.
Big part of me is thinking like, okay, I'm thinking maybe Florida home base, and then Colorado for 3 months, and then, and just split my time across a few different time zones, including Greece, motherland.
Love that.
Who doesn't from where we're from, at least. But, having that type of lifestyle where you're not just like, 9 to 5 in your cubicle, and you're on the subway going into Midtown Manhattan, and you're just, towing the line, and you get the mortgage, and you have 2.1 kids and the white picket fence. And then like that's boring.
Not for you.
I want to fly down a mountain as much as possible. I want to, have amazing tan skin at the beach. I want to be outwardly.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pale right now. This is breaking my heart.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm the same color as my wall.
You really are.
Just a nice light beige.
I'm going to buy you some bronzer.
Thank you. Thank you.
But just that kind of life where I squeeze the value out of it for myself, but then also in order to have these things, like, just real quick, you have to be at service to society simultaneously. Like, there's no way that
Absolutely.
you cannot have economic clout or economic success without entering in as many voluntary transactions. Like, you have to offer a service, a product, something. Even if you rent apartments that you own, right? You're providing housing. Okay, cool. You're giving a business a space to operate. Like, at least, define your product or service if you're gonna have an ability to hit these goals, right? If the FIRE movement, the financial independence,
Oh yeah, retire early.
movement, right? Everyone
Absolutely.
talks about that. Everyone talks about all that. But sometimes you have to have like a product to deliver to the community.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like doing the work, figure out who you can scale to do the work for you and make sure you pay them well.
Right. Even looking at it like a little bit altruistically, what are we meant to do? You said it, we all die. What are we meant to do on this world while we're here other than like support your fellow person? Like, at the end of the day, you could be filthy rich. You could have all the houses and all the boats and all the supermodels, but like what actually matters at the end of the day is like your relationships, like the value, and not economic value, but like emotional value, love, care that you can provide to like others in your life.
I think that as well. But I also think, like, you look at somebody like a Jobs, like a Steve Jobs. I mean, we all carry iPhones. That left a serious amount of impact. He decided to take his life in a way, like, by not really focusing on his cancer treatments, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put it all into the deployment of the iPhone.
Yeah. It's funny because you say that and it seems like you're looking at it at that with like such reverence. To me, I couldn't care less that I brought the world an iPhone. Like, in my dying days, I want to make sure my circle of people who I love the most are like around me and I know them and like they know me, right? Like, I feel like I don't care if the world has everyone knows my name. Like, that doesn't matter to me, So where do you stand on that? Because I think if you look at that on a spectrum, everyone's on the spectrum somewhere. Where do you think you lie? I'm more over here.
So if over here is the emotional benefit of having the close knit, let's say family, like, closest friends.
I'm thinking about it like impact on the world, right? Like, over here is impact on history. Like I don't know, Winston Churchill, like, I don't know, Steve Jobs, right? Like, over here is impact on history, on the world at large. You're in books. And over here is universe. Like, yes, a dent in the universe. And over here is impact to your small community and loved ones. I care way more about my impact over here.
Sure. I would beg to argue that what we just kind of described are simultaneously expressions of the feminine and the masculine.
I agree with that statement. Absolutely.
Like, women have proclivities to be more socially interactive with their career paths. Men tend to want to play with things. You look at an Elon Musk, right? He chose to build a freaking spaceship, or build an electric car after he sold out from PayPal.
I would argue that isn't necessarily true. I think there is still like social conditioning, like even as we were growing up, that like pushes men towards STEM and women towards the social sciences. I think like if you actually looked at men and women at large, we're not that different. Like, I don't think like boys like to play with things and women like to tend to people. I think it's like that's kind of where we've been societally pushed, but I feel like that's a conversation for a different day. But I agree with you to the point on energies is like impact to the individual versus at large.
Yeah. So I mean, where I would stand to answer the earlier question, I think I would probably I like a lot of things. I'm not necessarily one or the other in terms of my appreciation for what they, what they stand for. I actually would want to pull from both ends. Typical Gemini,
Yeah. I
yeah,
was going to make the Gemini comment earlier when you were like, I just don't want to be tied down. I'm like, oh, that's so Gemini of you.
it really is Gemini of me, like I just want to fly around the world constantly and,
I love it.
and escape nonsense with, distracting me with a great time constantly, so I can forget about the fact that this is a temporary experience.
Right.
But no, I come off like this is like a morbid sense of life, but I actually look at it rather lightheartedly and I make a joke of it.
Totally.
But I would rather be on the side of definite significant impact, but still want that as well, because ultimately, we're Greeks, family's a big part of our lives. We're showered with love and affection from our aunts, uncles, parents, yayas, papus, everybody, family's important to everybody to an extent. So I'd like to have both ideally, because I want it all. I'm a selfish glutton.
I too want it all. But Harry, this has been so good. Thank you for coming on. This has been very fun.
It's been a lot of good.